But he that giveth his mind to the law of the Most High, and is occupied in the meditation thereof, will seek out the wisdom of all the ancient, and be occupied in prophecy. Welcome, friends. I'm your host, Zen Garcia. This is The Dark Side of Purgatory, which will be next week changing over to Celebrate Truth. And I have as guests with me this evening both Pastor Nate Wolfe and also Robbie Davidson, who will be hosting that show, Celebrate Truth. Robbie, are you there, brother?
I'm here, Zen. Thanks so much for having me on. It's a pleasure as always.
Yeah, always good to be with both of you guys. Pastor Nate, are you there too, brother?
Yep, I'm here, Zen. Thanks again for having me.
Excellent. It's a pleasure, and I appreciate both of you assisting in the interim as we make our way through this new year. And it's been an interesting past few weeks of discussion. We've talked a lot about just with regard to the importance of cosmology and how it's connected even to the deception that all of us, well, not all of us, well, those of us that see coming on the horizon with regard to the whole premise of the extraterrestrials, the ancient aliens being pushed as the creators of humanity, that this is part of what we also link to the reason for the Darwinian and Copernican heliocentric worldview and the whole thing with NASA and everything. But I wanted to ask you guys, have you seen by chance the new movie about Neil Armstrong that has come out, First Man?
I haven't actually seen it yet. I've heard stories about it, but I have yet to see it. What about you, Pastor Nate?
No, I haven't seen it yet. The last several weeks been pretty busy with family and leading up to the holidays, but I do plan on seeing it hopefully sometime soon.
You know what I found strange though, Zen, is why would they release First Man on the 49th anniversary of the moon landing? Why not the
Right.
50th? Isn't that strange on the
Uh-huh.
49th?
Yeah. I think it's kind of they are um, forced to have to address so much of what we are bringing forth with regard to, doubting the moon landing and all the events and even the way that they teach with regard to the cosmology. And so they feel kind of their hand is being forced, or at least that's my assessment on it. What do you think?
Sure. I mean, a lot of that has to do with all the information that's coming out, and they're getting a lot more desperate and trying to prove things. Speaking of desperation, I'm not sure if you saw the news about the guy that supposedly crossed Antarctica out of the blue. Some guy
What?
from the U.S.
No.
Yeah, that was big news. All the media was running that this guy from the United States was the first man ever to traverse by himself Antarctica. So, these
Hmm.
things come up, and there's no real information or history. They just kind of pop up. And like I said, they're getting desperate on the Antarctica front. They're getting desperate on the space front. And we're going to continue seeing these things moving right into 2019. That's why I'm so excited to start the show, Celebrate Truth on Saturdays. It's going to be a wild, wild ride. I'm telling you.
Yeah, I'm very interested, as far as any idea on the format or how you are going to approach, or I know that you have a special person that I don't know if you want to announce yet or not, but I know
Sure.
that
Yeah.
you have somebody coming on to
Yeah.
co-host with you. So do you want to speak about that a little bit?
Sure. I wanted to mention, obviously, putting the show together. I knew that
I think we lost you there, Robbie. Say again.
He's just
Okay.
trying to keep us in suspense.
Yeah, right. Um, But just so you know, I think we lost you, Robbie. So when you come back in, hopefully, you won't get disconnected. But just let us know, and when we can hear you, we'll pick it up with what we were talking about. But in the meantime, Nate, what do you think? I mean, we're already 2019. Time is going by so quickly. It seems, uh, you know, that everything is accelerated. I mean, the years, the older I get, the faster things are going by.
Yeah, it's accelerating in a lot of ways, and of course, with everything going on in the world, and in with all the truth that has been revealed, especially the last 3 years or plus, it seems like things have kind of quickened a bit in the last 6 to 9 months. And of course, there's big expectations, even some big concerns about what 2019 and then 2020, 21 could do, and what that could bring. In fact, just a few months ago, my son, my youngest son, was getting his temps, his driving temps, and they asked. Well, I guess then he ended up getting his driver's license, and they asked if he wanted the federal regulation ID. And of course, I suggested that he turn that down, but apparently, it's not going to be very long until that
Robbie, are
has
you
to
there, brother?
be. Hey,
I
there's Robbie.
see him on video. Just sorry about that.
There you go.
Just making sure. I think you may be muted, brother, but uh, please continue, Pastor Nate,
Yeah.
and
Oh,
then
I
we'll
was just
go.
going to say, coming in spring of 2020 in the U.S., it appears that you have to have a federal ID, which
Really?
I'm not real excited about that. I think
Yeah.
either a passport or a federal. So you won't be able to just have a regular driver's license
Hmm.
after spring of 2020. So that's concerning, of course.
Yeah, absolutely. With another thing that I've heard that they are wanting to mandate is that the vaccinations, they want to kind of
Yeah.
bring on forced vaccinations with people getting their ID. And I don't know if you guys know about this as well, but Robbie, just so you know, it looks like you are muted here. Um, I see kind of that your mic is muted, so maybe check that. But also, the other thing is, I don't know if you guys know about like the organ harvestation, and then making yourself an organ donor, and that when you do that, you really put yourself at risk because in our for-profit healthcare institution,
Yeah.
they you are worth more to them, um, especially young people, and that often they will lie to family members in order to deceive them into giving up your organs so they can dell them out, and that they can make up to like $2 million a person
Yeah.
delving out somebody's organs. And so that's a really sinister side of the agenda that nobody speaks about or really knows about. They think, oh, I can get $10 off of my driver's license for being.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, that was just something that within the last couple weeks I found out about, really. So,
oh yeah, as far as the organ harvestation and all
yeah,
that.
what was going on with all of that? And yeah,
Yeah, that's a pretty crazy and sinister part of the agenda as well. Um,
looks like
Robbie,
Robbie's back in here.
Yeah, I came
okay.
back. I'm not sure what happened there.
Great.
Just everything just all of a sudden dropped. You can hear me now?
Yeah, we got you loud and clear.
That was very
And
strange.
so, yeah, that is strange. Sometimes, it does, a call will drop out like that, but usually it will disconnect. But I'm glad that we are able to keep you. But anyways, if you would, let's go back to talking about the show that you're going to be setting up, Celebrate Truth, and the kind of the format and things you'll be talking about, and also if you want to announce who'll be co-hosting or coming on with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I was saying before, that Pastor Nate Wolfe will be my co-host for the show, and we've got a lot of
Awesome.
fun
That's
stuff
great.
planned. Yeah, it's really exciting, and it's I think he's pretty excited. What do you think, Pastor Nate? You pretty excited?
Yeah, it's very exciting, and especially the timing, of the new year coming. I'm really looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a great show.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of
Fantastic.
fun. Yeah, so we'll be touching obviously not just biblical cosmology. We'll be getting into all sorts of different issues. Really, the big thing is, exposing all the world's lies, right? While we celebrate truth, because sometimes when you're getting into all these dark areas of the world and all the lies, it can be depressing and it can get you down. But that's the beautiful
Yeah.
thing, is that we can truly celebrate the truth and understand the freedom and what we have in Christ, and also just knowing the truth of what the Bible says, and that we're victorious, over any of this. So that's always something that's really important to me, to make sure that listeners are aware of that, because, like I said, a lot of times you can get really down hearing just how much negativity and how much awful crap's going on all over the place all the time. So for me,
Amen.
it's a big deal to also really celebrate the fact that we do have the truth, and truth does matter, and hope to make a huge impact on Revolutionary Radio.
Excellent. That is awesome. I'm really excited to hear that you guys are teaming up for the show, and I think Celebrate Truth. I don't know how it was that you came up with the name, but it's perfect, especially for what you're going to be doing. But can you tell us how it was that you selected Celebrate Truth as
Sure.
the
Yeah,
story
actually, it's
behind
an
that?
interesting story, because I don't think anyone's ever asked, and you're the first one
Okay,
to
cool.
ask, and I don't think anyone knows the story. So here's an exclusive for everyone tonight on
Awesome.
how Celebrate Truth came in. It actually came in with a lot of people, especially when it came to the promotion of Celebrate Pride. And I kept seeing all this hashtag as far as Celebrate Pride under the LGBT banner.
Hmm.
And I was just like, wait a minute, I was getting really upset with seeing all this. And I'm like, Celebrate Truth. Forget pride. I mean, pride is, hofty, and to me, it was something that I wanted to combat. So I came up with the hashtag Celebrate Truth, and really, that's kind of where it originated from. Was pretty much just combating and saying, look, I mean, it's not that there's shades of gray. There's literally black and white, right? Let's celebrate truth, right? So I had to
Awesome.
Celebrate Truth, and then I had it in images where, how they showed the rainbow and stuff. I'd show black and white. So I would have black and white saying that this is the identity, that there's right and wrong, not just anything goes, so to speak. So really, Celebrate
Right.
Truth has nothing to do overall when it came to, the most important thing with Celebrate Truth, though, was, celebrating the truth, which is important. But again, who is the truth? John 14:6, right? I am the way,
Yeah,
the truth, and the
right.
life.
Yeah.
No one comes to the Father except through me. So that was the most important for people to understand, that he was the truth. He was the way, and he is the life. And again, we really have to understand that if we want to be free from all of the sin that ensnares us.
Yeah, absolutely. And pride was what caused Satan, Lucifer. That's what led to iniquity being found within him, and it caused him and the 1/3 of the angels of the Most High that joined him in rebellion. It caused them basically their eternity, their immortality, and that even the Watchers that abandoned their first estate as well, they all fell because of pride and wanting to be as gods themselves. And so, you know, um, there's a reason we have a sovereign God over us. And I think this whole experiment of life shows us that given free will, humans and even the angels, we will fall away and cause such chaos and trying to do it ourselves that we end up with a world that, unless the days be shortened, there should be no flesh left. And so there's a reason why we need the Most High God to rule over and to instill the harmony. And even for that, he had to send his son to save us and to rectify the fall. Pastor Nate, would you
Amen.
care to comment on that? And then we'll.
Yeah, the scriptures have a lot to say about pride. One proverb says that a haughty spirit goes before a fall, and so you can think of many applications of that, some of which you've already mentioned. But when we look at people in general, a haughty spirit comes before a fall. And so, humility is the quality that represents Jesus Christ. He walked in a humble way. He was meek, but he wasn't weak. He was very strong. But the humility, I think, is needed more and more today, because people who don't necessarily know the Bible well, but they know enough about Jesus to know that his followers should be humble people. And so when they, particularly when a non-believer sees a believer who is acting in a way that's prideful, it brings reproach against Christ and his congregation. And it often can set people down that path of saying, oh, or they're just another hypocrite. And so a lot of people, when they see that pride, it's a turnoff. But when they see someone who's truly humble, not perfect, but humble and trying to walk as Jesus Christ walked, then there's often opportunity there, especially when they see a consistent, humility present.
Absolutely. And I'll give you a chance to comment as well, Robbie, and then I want to kind of lead this into a different direction.
I'm not sure if you can hear me, but it seems like the
Yeah.
connection's cutting in and out. So I'll
Okay.
try
Yeah,
this and hopefully.
we've got you.
Yeah, I heard it cutting in and out there a little bit. But yeah, no, I totally agree with what Pastor Nate had to say. And this is why it's so critically important that we address these topics. And going into 2019, there's going to be a lot more people that are looking into the lies of the world. Well, we're going to be there to expose each and every one of them.
I was watching earlier. I had this video about the in China, God in China and the ancient origins of their language, and what this particular pastor that was speaking about the enormity of the revival that's going on there in China. And I also know that this is also happening within a lot of the Muslim nations and countries, that there's a huge revival and a grand awakening with regard to understanding Christ as Savior Messiah. And this particular pastor was going through the language of the ancient Chinese and speaking about, because predominantly there in that country, they are Taoist, Buddhist, or Confucianists. And he was speaking about how when you become a Christian there in China, that a lot of people feel like you are turning your backs on your family, and that you are, conforming to a Western culture or Western way of being. But what this individual, this pastor, was talking about in looking at the origins of their language is he was revealing that even the names and the characters for so many things, as far as the symbols of different words, that they all had ingrained and encoded within them biblical concepts. For instance, even with the name, the sign, the character of a boat, it spoke about, um, 8 people, in building this boat and surviving a flood. And so all these different characters, even like the story of the creation and how God established it through the word, and even the name of the Most High God, that the ancient Chinese believed in the Most High God in the same way that the Hebrews worshiped Yahweh or Jehovah. And so he was just showing that in the original language, you had all of these biblical concepts that were encoded into the characters that are even now um, the Chinese language, and the people of China don't realize this. And so he was bringing out how even the ancient Chinese, they were followers and understanders of basically the core tenets of what are now the Christian faith, and that even the symbols for the lamb and sacrifice, they had to do with Yeshua dying on the cross and bringing a forgiveness to the world. And I also saw on another video that in the ancient Chinese, in the different books of the that copied the historical narrative of, what had happened, the astronomers, that they were speaking about these different anomalies that occurred on the dates of when Christ was born, even the during the time that he was crucified. And also, there was a strange anomaly 3 days later when he resurrected. There was a rainbow around the sun, but it spoke about, and it related strangely, that they talk about how the Son of God and spoke about the Son of God as bringing a forgiveness to the world. And this is all written down in the, in right when these events happened. And this was before the establishment of the church and before any kind of Christian ministry or missionaries or anybody was, doing the work of the Great Commission and sharing and taking the gospel abroad. And so it's intriguing to see that even in the, again, as far as the ancient Chinese, that they had preserved um, the events that seem to lead to and connect with the birth of Christ and the strange anomalies that had occurred, because they report, the Star of Bethlehem, this particular bright meteor, same as not meteor, but some kind of bright star moving through the heavens, and that it depicted even what the Magi had seen. And then on the crucifixion, they speak about how uh, the God King had died in order to bring forgiveness and to pardon the sins of humanity. And they speak about the 3 hours of darkness, which is recorded even in the Bible, is speaking about how there was darkness over the land from the sixth to the ninth hour. And I believe that's in the book of Luke. But it's intriguing to see that you can find in the ancient histories um, confirmation as to the revelation of Christ, and it's found among all people everywhere. And so, what I wanted to ask you guys, because I know for a lot of people that do come and listen to Revolution Radio, that it is the network is largely New Age, and that there are, a few Christian voices. And so, I wanted to introduce and also to ask you guys how it was that you came to know Christ as Savior Messiah. What was it that, or what experience, or what study or knowledge, what confirmed for you that he truly was the pre-existent Son of God, and that he, was part of the Godhead that brought forth and created all things, and that he wasn't just another human being, or just another normal regular person, or even what the New Age say as just an ascended master, or somebody like, or an extraterrestrial being. Or what was it that you learned that convicted you and made you understand as to the the him being the omniscient and immortal, and the God incarnate in the flesh? Let's start with you, Pastor Nate, and then we'll go to Robbie.
Sure. Yeah, I'll be happy to share about that. I want to say something about the what you shared though first with the Chinese
Yeah, please
culture and
do.
language. I think that's fascinating. You brought up some points that I never realized were in some of that ancient, Chinese history. It reminds me of a video that Matt Long, who's Flat Worth on YouTube. Matt Long has a short video on the Japanese kanji, which is very similar to Chinese in that same sense, that some of those, pictures or word pictures, the characters talk about God and different things that God did through history. So, like you say, it's in a lot of cultures. And I remember watching another YouTube channel called The God Culture, and I don't agree with everything that they have on their YouTube channel, but one thing was interesting. They were talking about the Philippines, and there were some words or some names that they had of God that were just like the Hebrew. And then, of course, in recent past, I've done some dabbling in Native American studies, and American Indian, however you want to phrase that, because I do have some Cree Indian in my heritage, and notice too that some have exposed that in certain Native American languages, there are also, the names of God or other cultural things that would hint towards either possibly some of the Native Americans even being a lost tribe of Israel.
Yes.
And I know that's a whole nother subject and show, but I just find it interesting that so many different cultures have what you described. So first want to start
Right.
there.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And then I wanted to share, I always, growing up, um, I always believed in God. I had a believing mother and an unbelieving father, but my mother was very consistent in her faith. And I just always had that childlike faith, I guess is the best way to describe it. And it was more or less later on a confirmation of what I already believed through the scriptures as I got more into the scriptures myself instead of just, the concept of God and, going to Catholic Mass as a young kid and learning a few things, but there wasn't a big focus on the scriptures. And so it wasn't until my later teen years, as I've shared before in some of my testimony, about praying a prayer for God to help me to know truth and to find a church that was trying to follow the Bible and just wanting to know Him better, have a closer relationship. And so it's more along the lines of beginning in my teen years and kind of just continuing a journey of confirmation, not just from things that I see in the Word, but confirmation about who He is and His power and His, omniscience and even His foreknowledge through the answering of prayers and just seeing His work in my life. And so, I obeyed the gospel at age 18. I believed in Jesus Christ. I repented of my sins and was baptized into Christ. And so really at age 18 was that turning point where the same year I became a legal adult in the American culture. I also really feel like that was when I really became a true believer and began developing a faith of my own.
Awesome. Excellent. Robbie, I'd like to pose the same question to you, brother. And also, if you care to comment on the stuff about China, you're welcome to, or if you want to just move into, testimony of how you discovered really the omniscience of Yeshua.
Sorry about that. I had my mic muted. But yeah, I think you bring up some good points, and that's all part of my testimony when it came to apologetics. And I think that's remarkable when you start to see all these different cultures. Now, the question is, what's the authority? A lot of people will like to say, well, this is the authority or that's the authority. But what you're seeing is accounts from the biblical account. And obviously, they get lots of things right. There's lots of things also wrong. But the flood is a really good case and scenario. I think creation is another one. And all these things that you brought up really show that there was an ultimate authority of a story. And that story throughout cultures, it did get changed in times, but also it's based on that authority. And I think when it comes down to apologetics and part of my testimony, that was what was so important to me, was finding out that you could look through the historical record. You could look into archaeology. You could look into all these different areas. Being a doubting Thomas as I was, that's what was really solidified things for me. But a bit about my story. I didn't come to Christ until the age of 21. Now, before that, I was the last guy in the world you would ever think would be carrying a Bible or even talking about Jesus or even thinking about getting into biblical topics. For me, it was a laughing matter. I thought the Bible was ridiculous. My parents were not Christian. We did go to church more for family, and it was a good thing to do growing up just because that was tradition and that's what they had known throughout their life. But I would say even before junior high, I started to sway out of going to Sunday school or even church, because I would come home and I'd be all excited. I'd be like, look at Noah's Ark. We just did this Noah's Ark thing. And my dad would quickly show me how science proved that completely wrong in every, ounce of the word. So for me, it was actually science that really started persuading me against just looking at the Bible as any type of credible authority on anything, especially when it came to creation. So quickly, I basically ran away from anything to do with religion, the Bible. I got to a point where I took great pleasure into ridiculing Christians. I thought they were ridiculous. I'd make fun of them. I wouldn't say I was an atheist, but I was a hardcore agnostic in the sense that while I didn't really truly know, I maybe believed that there was a higher power. I still thought anyone that believed in a silly book written by men, thousands of years ago, I thought that was ridiculous. I looked at the Noah's Ark as a ridiculous an account. How could you fit all these animals on a boat? The story of Jesus I had problems with, not to mention when it came to Genesis and just the beginning, it contradicted everything that science had to say. So I would say that science was a big motivator in me, not running into the arms of science, but definitely looking at the Bible as something that couldn't be trusted. And it wasn't until the age of 21, interesting enough, where I met someone and we hit it off real well, and we were hanging out and stuff. And there was something a little bit different. He never really came. He wasn't forward. He wasn't saying he was a born again Christian or anything, but I knew something was different because I'd be partying at the bars, and afterwards we would go out just kind of driving around, cruising around. Well, he'd come and pick me up. I wasn't driving at the time, and he would never come in the bar. Like, come on in for a bit while the bars were closing. And he's just like, no.
We lost you again, brother. Well, when Robbie's able to come back and join us, we'll try to see if we can restore and refresh his connection. But I'll speak a little bit about myself in the interim until Brother Robbie's back and can continue his testimony. It was a very strange journey for me. Oh, wait, you're there, Robbie?
Yeah, here. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yeah, we can hear you. When we get to the first break, what we'll do is I'll get you to drop, and then I'll add you on again to see if we can reset your connection. But if you would, please continue.
Okay, yeah, and so that was the deal there. So it wasn't until this conversation where we got talking, and it really blew my mind. And I remember at one point he said, I said, well, it's okay, I believe in a God or whatever. He said, well, it's not important enough, You have to believe in the truth, and you have to believe that Jesus was the way and the truth and the life. And anyways, I went to bed that night, and I was thinking about it. Well, I think it was the next week I went out clubbing and hanging out, and it was in one ear, and nothing really changed much. And it wasn't until I think the following week, it was on the Friday or whatever, I was at my parents' house, and I was on in the basement on the couch. Well, I woke up at 2 a.m, and this is where it gets kind of supernatural and kind of a little interesting because not many people have these experiences. And I felt this presence all around me. And all I remember is holding my hands up and saying, I'm coming to you. And that was it. Now I woke up the next morning and I remembered vividly what had happened. And I thought that was really strange. There's this weird presence around me. And I looked up at it was just a big row of VHS tapes. I don't know if many people that are in the listening audience remember VHS tapes, but it dates us a little bit here. But they had all these VHS tapes sitting up on a shelf. Well, there was one that was glowing, and it was the movie Jesus. So I went up to it and I grabbed it because, like I said, a week prior, my friend was talking all about Jesus and who he was, and that was the most important. You have to find out who this man named Jesus was. Well, anyways, I grabbed the video out of 150 VHS tapes that were sitting up on a shelf. This one was literally glowing. I grabbed it, I put it in the VCR. I sat there. You there?
Yeah.
Hello? Oh, sorry. It's really. Yeah. Reconnecting and disconnecting. I'm not sure what's going on. So anyways, I put it in the VCR, and at the end of it, I gave my life. At the end, I got on my knees and I surrendered my life, and that was it. From
That's
that
amazing.
point on, everything radically changed. I remember people were saying, never in a million years Robbie is a Christian, but anyways, it blew a lot of people's minds, and from there it's been an amazing journey over the last over 20 years now.
Wow. Yeah, that is pretty amazing. Myself, for the longest time, I was led through and had gone through a lot of the New Age stuff and read a lot of the Sumerian teachings and did a lot of all of that. I was involved in shamanism and doing sweat lodges and really embracing the Native American, the traditions and just the teachings that they had brought forth. And as you said, Pastor Nate, when you really begin to examine some of the Native traditions, you discover that they seem to be lost tribes and connected even their language to some of the Hebrew traditions. And so it brought me full circle back to Christianity. And so I began and decided to read the Bible and to read the extra biblical text in a way that I had never done previously. And even though in the 20 years of my journey and going down this road of embracing the New Age and studying all of the Sumerian teachings. I was fully into all the Zechariah Sitchin, and I had, believed that even what I teach against now, as far as the Anunnaki, that they were some kind of special, emissaries of the Most High God, and they were some way, godlike beings. But I knew the Father. I had always known and had a special connection and respect for the Creator, and I was a good person in the way that, just embracing God and wanting to do what I felt God wanted me to do. But I did embrace a lot of New Age concepts, and I never could understand how it was and why it was that God would have a son. That just didn't make sense to me. And I know that for a lot of the Muslim peoples, this is something that they wrestle with as well. I could not understand why it is that God would have a son or need a son, and all that just did not make sense to me. And so when I began to read and to study the Bible and the extra biblical text, well, I realized that there was a Godhead, and in my opinion, it reflects the family. And so I understood that the reason that Christ and the reason that the Father had sent his Son here was to redeem humanity, that we falling away and having fallen in and now being born into flesh form, that we were caught up in a fallen state of being, and that this truly was a fallen world. And the duality that we are experiencing here, the good and evil, the light and the darkness, the pain and pleasure, that the earth is a proving ground, and that it is where spirit and matter come together in union, and that this, what we see is the propagation of evil and the predominance of it, that the reason things are the way that they are, and the reason that we see even now, the wars and the rumors of war and the suffering, and even with the starvation and people having a hard time wherever they may be, is because a lot of that is created and propagated by the powers that be, the forces that are aligned against us. And I discovered really that there was a spiritual component to the reality of what we see, as far as the the duality of experience here in this world, and understanding that Satan and the principalities, the rulers of darkness, that they've been given temporary reign over this world, and that they have been given this temporary reign for purpose, that all of it is about not only testing them, but also about testing us and coming into the flesh and being born of the flesh. But that the most important aspect of what I now have come to understand with regard to prophecy and the study of the scripture is that Christ truly was the incarnated incarnation of God here in flesh, and that he had to come into the flesh in order to fulfill a role and a purpose, and that he was and became, even like what I was talking about as far as the Chinese characters and how they show that even the word for sacrifice and the sacrificial lamb and things of that nature, they point to and speak about the coming of Christ and how he fulfilled in role, that he was the Passover lamb without spot or blemish, and that even the character for Christ, it shows this without spot or blemish, that was one of the mandates for when you sacrifice a lamb on the Passover, which for those that don't know what the Passover was, is during the time that the Israelites were in bondage in Egypt, that God brought Moses up and Moses and Aaron, and that they 10 plagues were brought upon Egypt. And the final plague was that God would strike down the firstborn of the cattle and all the Egyptians, but he protected the Israelites um, with this Passover ceremony. And what they would do is they would sacrifice a lamb without spot or blemish, and then they would mark on their doorposts outside of their residence the letter Ta, which is in what we see now as a cross, or the letter T. And so that was the mark, that was the sign that the angel of death looked for in protecting those that were dwelling within, and to keep them from, this um, the striking down of the firstborn within those particular households. And so this ceremony was conducted, and it became a festival that the Israelites, even to this day, they celebrate the Passover. And so Christ, when he came into the flesh, he was actually crucified on the 14th of Nisan, which is the day that the Passover is celebrated every year on the full moon of the 14th of Nisan. And then we have on the 15th of Nisan another festival of the Israelites, which is the Feast of Unleavened Bread. And that was when they were released from the bondage in Egypt, and were allowed to begin their exodus, and to leave Egypt and to go and meet before God and the mountain of Mount Sinai. Well, the on the 16th of Nisan, they celebrate what is called the Day of First Fruit. And the Israelites, on that day, the high priest waves as offering for the sins of Israel the barley feast, a sheaf of what is the barley, an omer of the barley, and that brings a forgiveness. And it's also a way that they show gratitude to the Most High God for the new year harvest. And they actually then began to partake of and to eat of the new harvest for the new year. And so the high priest, that Yeshua was resurrected on the 16th of Nisan for the first fruits. He was the high priest in the order of Melchizedek, and that he also resurrected with him Adam and all of the descendants, his righteous descendants that were bound in Sheol. And those that know the story of Christ, when he was away from his body, he descended down into the depths of hell in order to bring liberty to the captives. And it speaks about this, and that the resurrected dead were seen in the streets of Jerusalem. And so, there's many confirmations. Even the two of those that were resurrected, Lucinius and I forget the other one's name. I think it's Critias, uh, Karnak or Critias or something like that. But they were the children of Simeon, the high priest, who had, when he saw Christ and baptized him, that he passed away. But that was also a prophecy that was given, that he would see the coming of the Messiah, the birth of the King of the Jews, the King of the Israelites, and that he would pass away. And that was also another prophecy that was fulfilled in Christ. But studying the Levitical feast days, and also how it was that 40 days later, that when the Israelites received the law on Mount Sinai for what was Shavuot or Pentecost, what the Christians celebrate as Pentecost, that was also the day that the Holy Spirit came upon the apostles, and that they were, they spoke in tongues, and all the people from all the different nations were able to understand them in their own language. And so he fulfilled the first four feasts, the seven holy days that the Most High had given to the Israelites, and this was way before his coming. I mean, in just the statistical impossibilities of him even fulfilling that. I mean, it's insane. But when you examine even the in the Old Testament, there are 308 prophecies aligned with his coming, and that Isaiah spoke about in great detail all throughout the scriptures, um, found in the 66 chapters of the book of Isaiah. There's numerous, and he wasn't the only Old Testament prophet which foreshadowed the coming of Christ, but many of them, Micah and others, also spoke about the coming of Yahushua, Daniel, and so all of these Old Testament prophets were speaking about the coming of Christ, and he in fact fulfilled all of these without one mistake, in complete 100% accuracy. Um, all of these prophecies that are contained in the Old Testament, and that in the New Testament you see the fulfillment of them. And so, having studied all of the other New Age teachings and reading through all the Sumerian mythology and all that, that is the one component that is lacking from all of those other ancient wisdom texts and other ancient books and all of these other religions. They do not have prophecy in the manner that you find contained within the Bible. And so I knew without a doubt that the Most High God had inspired the word as it was given to the prophets and as it was dictated to Moses, and that he had ordained and mandated the Levitical feast days, which his son had fulfilled when he came into the flesh. And so I knew without a doubt that the Most High God had sent his son in order to die as the Passover lamb, in order to bring a forgiveness of sins to all humanity. And so I knew without a doubt he was Savior Messiah. And then the last thing, which I'll speak on, and then I'll get you guys to comment on this. But reading the infancy gospels and studying about the lost years and the early childhood of Christ, and understanding that even as a babe, that Mary utilized his bathwater and his swaddling clothes to heal people that had paralytic, and leprosy and all these other diseases, um, conditions of the blood, all these different conditions and diseases, that even as a babe, his power and authority, that he could even resurrect. Like there was this one time where, as a child, he was accused of pushing this boy off of a roof, and they blamed him for the murder of this young child. And he told them, no, I didn't do this. And then he went down to the young child that was on the ground dead, resurrected him to life, and had him tell his parents and the crowd that had gathered that he did not do this to him. And the boy, in fact, confessed that he had fallen, and that he would, Christ as Lord did not push him. And I mean, just all these incredible stories about how he had even the authority of life and death as a young child. Um, he's not just another human being or just another person, that he truly was God incarnate. And that's the reason why, without, a doubt, he fulfilled all of these signs. And that, even the stories that, even like in the ancient Chinese, the annuals and the histories, they speak about him, the signs, even that the signs in the heavens and the earth, when he died and also when he was born. These are things that signify his omniscience and his connection to the Most High God, and his being the Son of God. So I know without a doubt, that he is and was part of the Godhead that manifests all things, that created the angels, created humanity, created the earth, created all things for us. And so I know him as God, and I know him as Savior Messiah. So, um, Nate, let me get you to comment on this, and then
Yeah.
we'll go to Rob.
Yeah, the prophecies are so powerful, and like you said, over 300 specific to Christ. And as I mentioned before in some broadcasts, Isaiah 53, the suffering servant, is so powerful that to me it's one of the most powerful prophecies because it really speaks to what the Christ would suffer, and being stricken for us and smitten for us, and that was part of the Father's plan. It was His will for that to take place so that we could have, as you said, the precious blood of an unblemished lamb. We could have that sacrifice. Without the shedding of blood, there is no sacrifice for sins. And so praise God for that. And, things that Jesus, did along His growth, and starting to do these other, miracles. And then, of course, in the Great Commission, Matthew 20, 28, where He just very much declared emphatically that all authority has been given to me in heaven and on earth. So, that leaves no doubt that He is able to do anything and everything. There's so many powerful testimonies. And as you pointed out, that those things are absent, from these other historical accounts. And when you look at, previous religious leaders, like Muhammad and Confucius and all these other guys, none of them ever claimed that they would resurrect. They died and they're still dead. And that's the other big difference, is that Jesus Christ rose. That's the most powerful proof that anyone, could offer.
Right. And He's coming to people even now and, bringing them to understand the truth of why He came and what He did for us. Robbie?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say that obviously when it comes to the biblical account, it's obviously pretty clear that Jesus was not merely just a man. C.S. Lewis summed it up very well when he said either Jesus is a lunatic, a liar, or He's Lord. He didn't give us, he didn't leave us open to other possibilities like other religions want to have Him as a great prophet or a good teacher. I mean, He claimed way too much just to be deemed that. So I think, anyone examining His life has to come to their decision on who do you, seriously looking at it, who do they say that Jesus is? As far as any of the other extra biblical books, I mean, I'm very, very cautious. I personally don't really read any of the extra biblical books. The only exceptions possibly would be the Book of First Enoch, Jubilees, and Jasher, just because they are mentioned in the Bible. And when you're getting into the Gospel of Thomas and you're getting into all these other extra biblical, like other gospels and stuff, personally, I think it's dangerous. Opening it up to too much, I think, can be a little bit dangerous. I think there's a specific reason why the Bible, doesn't really go into much detail about His earlier life. But I mean, that's the way I look at it. For me, I base my doctrine, I base any of my teachings solely on the Bible. It's interesting to me, just like history is interesting. But again, I give it no weight, I give it no authority, and I would not deem it as canon, even though there's controversy as far as, what books were to be included, what aren't. I think sometimes on the internet, there's a lot of information. But for me, I can trust God that, He knew what He was doing in compiling His book. The Bible is one of the most hated books around the world. It's the most outlawed book in many countries. And for me, whether it's biblical cosmology or the deity of Christ or any type doctrine, for me, I would solely base it on the 66 books. Anything outside of there, I take with caution. When you're getting into the early childhood writings, Islam goes into great detail into Jesus' life, and I stay away from Islam for many reasons.
All right, we'll be right back for second hour, everyone.
Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. And we'll be right back after this message.
All right, welcome back, everybody, for second hour. I am your host, Zen Garcia. This is the dark side of purgatory, and I know that many of you have been wishing for and wishing well to the hijacker as he takes a break from broadcasting. And I know that at some point he'll probably join again, and maybe if it's not on Pastor Deacon's show, somebody, maybe he'll even come on with me. But he's a good brother. He does incredible work, and I know a lot of people really appreciate him and all that he's done for the network. I do want to quickly remind everybody that Revolution Radio is a corporate free and commercial free and listener supported radio broadcasting platform, and that Nighthawk and the other producers who give of their time do need even just a little of your financial support in order to be able to coming to you in the manner that we do, and that in order to keep the message pure and to keep truth untainted with regard to having limitations or some kind of boundary that we're not able to cross, they do keep the network only and solely supported by the listeners. And that gives us the freedom to be able to speak about truth and to share it in whatever manner we wish without the bias of corporate support and corporate sponsorship. And so those of you that can, please do go to freedomslips.com, click on the donate button and share whatever you can. Know also that there are different deals that are available. There's the non-GMO seed pack. There's the bullet drive with all the emergency information. There's also a deal where you can donate and get a silver eagle as a gift for supporting the network. And also you can, if you would like, just click on donate and include in your message that you would like an autographed copy of one of my books, and I'll be glad to personalize it and send it to you or whoever you would like me to send it to. Just please do include a $25 donation or more if you like. And the other thing is that for $4.95 a month, you can gain access to the archives and listen to all of the shows of the 91, 92 different hosts that come on Studios A and Studio B 24/7. And a lot of times, because we have two different studios, there might be an individual that you want to listen to at the same time that another is broadcasting, and not being able to, that this would be a perfect way for you to download the archives, upload them to your iPad, your iPod or whatever, and you can listen to them as you're driving to work and share them with others, burn them to CD, whatever. But know that we appreciate you in advance. And so let me go ahead and see if Robbie's ready to come back on with us. But we do have Pastor Nate, and I do want to also quickly share that I have, and my foundation is also based upon the 66 books of the foundation of the King James Version of the Bible, and that I know it to be absolutely the inspired truth, especially with the work of Ivan Panin, who shows that mathematically, and this was a guy that was a communist, an atheist, and did not believe in the Bible or its inspired nature, but he proved without a doubt that the King James, in the way and in the manner that it is brought together, has been inspired, and that it contains a mathematical code that shows without a doubt that it is the inspired work of the Most High God. And so I completely trust, and as I said, even the prophecies of the coming of Christ and his incarnation in the flesh form contained in it is just statistically impossible. Um, Even just having 8 of the 308, fulfilled in the manner that he fulfilled them is, again, it's a miracle, and it again shows that he absolutely was and is part of the pre-existing Godhead that fashioned and brought in all things, as revealed in John chapter 1. Robbie, you there, brother?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, good. I just wanted to, hopefully, we won't have any problems, but I wanted to, you guys are going to be covering all kind of different topics and talking about just really your awakening to truth. And so, any ideas on, what you got lined up for the first few shows, or?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, the first show, we're going to get more into the introduction and talk a little bit more about ourselves, but we definitely are going to be exposing a lot of the world's lies, specifically when it comes to what we've been taught about the world, when it comes to scientism. We're going to get into the Bible. We're going to get viewer, input as far as questions, and obviously have some really great guests on. So that's kind of the plan for the beginning of 2019.
Also, I know that you had said and you wanted to really incorporate and give the listening audience, especially for a lot of people that tried to reach out to you, and you're a really busy guy. And so I know that it's overwhelming to try to get back with everybody. But you did
Yeah,
want to
absolutely.
have a segment of listener call in. Is that going to be throughout the show, or just like the last
Yeah.
30 minutes, or how are you?
Yeah, so the plan is, I'm not sure if it's going to be every show or the first few shows, but we're eventually going to
Yeah.
get to a point where most likely the second hour is when we're going to open it up for call-ins. And the
That's
idea,
great.
what
Yeah.
we're going to do for the show is we're going to be broadcasting the first hour on YouTube. So it will be visual. We will be doing the first hour, and then people will be up and going to Revolutionary Radio for the second hour. So it'll be a nice interactive way of doing it as far as visually, but then also they can catch the second hour by going to Revolutionary Radio and then checking out everything there. So only the first hour will be available on YouTube. You'll have to, be member and that sort of thing with Revolutionary Radio as far as hour 2, if you want to get the archives and that sort of thing, as their listener supported. And obviously it's great to support them with what they're doing and allowing truth to be told without any censorship.
Yeah, excellent. That's great. And I was just talking with Pastor Nate. I think it's a excellent. As far as you guys teaming up together, especially with what you both have experienced with regard to standing for this truth and how you've been ostracized, judged, and condemned for it. And so, Pastor Nate, I think it's going to be an awesome collaboration, you two together.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. And, I've only known Robbie well for a couple of months, but we spent a lot of time together at the Skyfall conference, which was really great because, he was able to let his hair down just a bit there since Dean was running that. And Robbie was doing some speaking, but he wasn't having to be everywhere and do everything. And so, Robbie had a lot of free time, and we got to hang out together, get to know each other much better, in person rather than just talking on the phone. And so I think that was a good start to, us getting to know each other and becoming friends. And of course, we've talked a lot on the phone since that time. And it just seemed like, it seemed like a good fit. I mean, when he first mentioned it to me, of course, I was very excited, but it wasn't something that I was sitting there going, I don't know if that would work. I'm not sure if that's a great match. Immediately I was thinking, yeah, that just makes a lot of sense. And with Robbie's, where we're both, of course, being believers, but with Robbie's expertise with scientism and the documentaries that he's done, and of course, with my years in ministry and Bible study and research, I think those will really complement each other well.
I think that's going to be an excellent collaboration. But are you guys also going to be um, going into and bringing forth the message of the word and doing any kind of chapter by chapter, verse by verse teaching, or are you, not doing that or is that also, something you will do every once in a while or periodically?
No, I think the plan is obviously to be able to get really into the Bible as far as different topics. So, excuse me, that is the plan for sure. I mean, not every show, because we'll be talking about things that are happening in the news. We'll be going into eschatology. We'll be talking about biblical cosmology. We'll just be talking about a ton of stuff, especially when it comes to flat Earth. From my understanding, when I talked with the team at Revolutionary Radio, there really is no show on the entire network of 93 hosts that do anything on flat Earth. We had a really interesting discussion on flat Earth. So I really want to focus a lot on that, just because it will get attention. Like, what, flat Earth? What, they're talking about flat Earth? So that will be kind of primarily there. But again, we will move into other areas, just because, as you know, the Bible does hold the key to the truth with many, many topics. But I want to keep it specifically to what's going on, what NASA is doing, what scientism's up to, and just keep it relevant and stuff to inform people. I mean, I do a lot on my channel. Pastor Nate does a lot of stuff as well. So we'll be able to bring that into together as far as what we're doing. But I think we're going to have a lot of fun. We'll be able to banter back and forth, but we have good personalities. Pastor Nate and I are the same in many ways when it comes to the way we view kind of the big picture, our mannerisms, kind of our temperament. But again, we are different, and opposites attract as far as complementing each other. So I think that we're going to bring a really awesome flavor to Revolutionary Radio, especially with the show Celebrate Truth.
Yeah, awesome. And I do agree with you that this particular topic with regard to flat Earth and biblical cosmology, that there's a lot to speak about. And it's something that is still relatively new on the scope of most people's research into alternative truth. And that most people are still getting over their judgment and their bias and their indoctrination into and their antagonism towards this subject matter to even begin investigating it in a thorough or open-minded manner. And so, as we've talked about in previous shows, once one is able to overcome such condemnation, that it's quite easy to confirm without a doubt that the earth has no curvature and that it is also motionless, both, as far as these things are revealed within the scriptures as well. And so it's maybe 1% of the population even knows and understands this. And then its links and connections to the other deceptions with regard to the Big Bang cosmology and Darwinism and evolution and all that is also very important, because as we talked about previously as well, scientism has been the number one and dominant faith and religion, because that's what it is, to lead astray people. And you find that most people that are scientists with PhD degrees, that they are atheists. And so there's something that forces people that embrace science and scientism, it separates them from God and from relationship with him. And so why do you think that is? Pastor Nate, we'll go to you and then we'll go to Robbie.
Yeah, I want to say real quick, I think you brought up a really good point, because, I'm fairly new to the public side of speaking about flat Earth, biblical Earth. But as most of you guys have been in, since 2015, roughly. And so I could imagine that for a lot of those who've been around for 3 years, some certain topics about, biblical creation can sometimes seem trivial or boring, or, we've talked about this before, or I've given this presentation, 50 times. But it's important for us to remember that fresh people are waking up, every single day. And so they need to hear, and it may be a radio show in the future. It may be, YouTube videos or other publications, books, resources that are going to help them. And so I think that's important to mention. If you guys a year ago, all said, this is old hat. We're moving on to something else. I mean, where would I be? I needed that at that time. So I just wanted to, throw that in there. But, regarding waking people up to the truth, it's so important that we stay at it and not grow weary in well doing, as the scriptures teach, because we have more and more opportunities to share the gospel, as with folks who are open to the Bible in ways that they'd never have been. And if I can, I just want to share with you, I was fired, and in a sense, technically we weren't kicked out of the church, but anybody with half a brain would realize how that would be nearly impossible for my family to stay involved in that congregation, especially when we had a handful of people that were being very antagonistic. But I do want to say, we have had some continued contact with some of the people from the church, and several have reached out to us through the holidays, and so that's been encouraging. Yeah, so that's been encouraging. So I'm not anti-church, I'm anti-folks who, behave wrongly, who aren't following the patterns and the teachings and the examples that we see in Scripture. But I do want to say specifically, my family has sort of a home congregation now. It started with just, the six of us kind of circling the wagons and wanting to have a safe place to worship each week where we knew that no one could fire me and no one could kick us out. And it started to grow. And we have a teenage friend of my kids from the youth group that's been attending with us. We have one of my son's girlfriends has been attending, and she is now bringing her Bible weekly, and she is thinking about studying about becoming a Christian. So that's very exciting. And then I mentioned before, my son's boss came to 100% belief in flat Earth through some YouTube videos that I had, and I think that's exciting. But what's more exciting is that he recently was looking into the gospel more seriously. And my son just spoke with me yesterday and said, my boss wants to talk with you and me about a time where we could get together and study about the gospel. So, there's been so many opportunities that I've personally witnessed that have been, springboarded from a discussion and teaching and sharing about biblical creation. So we can't overemphasize how important that is. And of course, it's Jesus Christ that saves and his blood that washes away our sins. But for many, flat earth has been an open door to that.
Absolutely. And it's leading, again, even militant atheists and agnostics to the truth and forcing them to consider a new paradigm. Robbie?
Yeah, I mean, I think the topic is so important, and there's so many people that are coming to the knowledge of what the Bible has to say about the true creation, and then leading right to the true creator. So this topic is incredibly important, and there's so much fruit that's being yielded from it. A lot of people say it's a distraction, or we should just focus on the gospel. And while it's not salvational for our fellow brothers and sisters in Christ already, this is a conduit. This is definitely something that gets people ready and receptive. They, for the first time, open the Bible when they start looking at the lies that have gone on, and they realize that scientism has lied to them about so many things, whether it's the origins, whether it's who they are, what they are, where they're going. All of these things were put together very elaborately in a spiritual sense. And when they understand that there is a spiritual force trying to keep them away from the true creator, then they really understand that they want to desire the truth even more, and that will lead them, to the way, the truth, and the life, which is Jesus. And that's what's so fantastic. Is just so many stories through the documentaries I've done, through the book, through the YouTube channel, so many things. I get so many emails, and it's unbelievable to me just what God is doing through this truth. And I think why we're seeing so much fruit is because scientism, shapes everyone's worldview. Everyone from a very early age is taught exactly, about the reality and the truth of life through science. And we're taught that science is true and, it can't do any wrong. Well, the reality is that so much of it now is scientism. It's not really truly science. It's not done under the empirical method whatsoever. And that's the dangerous part about it. And I can't think of one more ideology or something in society that drives more people away from the Bible and God as science. And when I say science, I'm talking about scientism. There is not one other thing. Buddhism doesn't take that many people away, or Satanism, or even, when you get into everything. And you got to remember what it creates is a very atheistic worldview. Most people that basically run into the arms of scientism instantly become atheists and proud of it. And they go on to actually fight something that they don't even believe in, which is really funny. For some people that don't believe in a God, they fight their whole life against something they don't even believe. So for me, this is incredibly important time in history. I believe that God is waking people up for a very specific reason. I believe it's a huge responsibility that we have. We've got to be careful. Eyes are on us, but also with ridicule and mockery and all this stuff that comes with it. We're told that this is what's going to happen. But again, to be on the front lines of this is quite something. I've done a lot of ministry over 20 years, whether it was street ministry, whether it was prison ministry, whether it was dealing with so many different aspects of evangelism. But I don't think I've ever seen something as big as the evangelistic opportunity that comes from when people understand that the world has lied to them and that there is the truth, and the truth in only one, in one name given under heaven, which all men must be saved.
Yeah, again, with regard to the enormity of the deception, I mean, it again, even with what we talked about with the moon landings and understanding that the so-called accomplishments of the Apollo missions, that all of that was fabricated, that's a huge deception to come to try to wrap your mind around how, and even now that they are fomenting these things, speaking about sending people to the moon again or to Mars, and that there's still so much, like we said, $56 million a day that is going to NASA, that this huge amount of money being stolen from the American people, and then all these other space agencies worldwide. How much money is going into the black hole of these space agencies that could be better utilized in taking care of children and feeding the homeless? And now they've made it in a lot of cities to where it's illegal to feed the homeless or to give food or to take care of the homeless. I mean, it's insane, and yet this huge amount of money just disappearing every day, going to what? Just shows the backward nature of what we're dealing with as a world. Pastor Nate?
Yeah, you make a very good point. I saw some videos recently on social media that addressed the fact that there's groups of government officials and police that are following people around that give food to the homeless. And there was one group, I can't remember the name, but they would post on social media where they're going to be, so that people who are homeless or just in need could go to that location and get food and different things. And the officials were using the social media posts to pinpoint where this group would be, and they were basically shutting down the operation. So I don't believe all government is bad, and certainly as a former police officer, I know that there are good officers out there. But I just thought, man, what a use of our tax dollars and times, enforcing a law that, would stop someone from getting a daily meal, And you would think, they try to say, well, it's health concerns, it's this, that, and the other. But, don't you think that the person who's starving should be given the ultimate authority to say, I'm going to opt out of this chili because I'm not sure if it's healthy. Give me a break.
Yeah, you're right.
But yeah, you're right. I mean, when you look at the $56 million a day, and that's direct earmarked for NASA. When you know how government works, it's more like an octopus where you've got all these different arms. So I'm sure there are subcategories, at times that can also be attached to that. I imagine the number is probably a lot higher if we had transparency. But yeah, even if it was $10 million a day, I mean, wow, how much good could be done. So yeah, I mean, it's one thing if space really did exist. I could get behind, spending some money towards exploration and Space Force and all that junk. But but when you know that it doesn't exist, and when you realize that our tax dollars are going to deception, that's the part that really bothers me personally.
Yes, I agree. Robbie?
Yeah, sorry, what was the question?
Just about, what could be better done with all that money that's being given to support NASA, and how even they, they made in a lot of cities in the United States of America, it's illegal to feed the homeless, and it's also illegal to be homeless. I mean, what kind of insanity is that? I mean,
yeah, well, in certain places, it's illegal to grow your own garden. Because they got to monitor your food and stuff. So yeah, it's getting pretty out of hand for sure. But getting into the question about all the money that's being spent, NASA currently now is getting $56 million per day. And exactly what have they produced for humanity? What exactly have they done other than, these imaginary going to these other worlds and looking for life, and it's just nonstop craziness that goes on. And they just spend so much money, and they've done nothing. They've not invented anything. They've not bettered humanity, and they continue just taking taxpayer dollars and lying to them about so many things. Not to mention telling them that they're going to do stuff, and they never do it. And then people will say, "Well, that's NASA. What about those private enterprises like SpaceX and Virgin Galactic?" Well, the same thing is true with them. I mean, they've been promising trips to the moon and hotels and all sorts of things from like 2004. I mean, if you go back and you start dating it, you can see where they continually talk about doing things over and over and over, and they never follow through. They never, ever follow through. And then NASA, like I said, they're one of the biggest culprits, and most of them are in bed with NASA anyways. But yeah, there could be so many things done with that money to better humanity, especially when you're talking the hungry and the homeless and all these things. This doesn't need to happen. But we could probably say the same thing when it comes to the arms race and it gets into war. They spend an enormous amount of money when it comes to that, when you got starving people and they're not really looking out for, their own people themselves. But the idea of spending so much money on space is just ridiculous. They keep claiming now that going back to the moon would be so expensive. And it's like, are you kidding me? In the 60s, they went there, no problem. And yet we're led to believe in almost, 50 years, they can't. Apparently they're planning to go back in late 2020s. I've done a couple of videos recently on my channel on YouTube, and I document this. And most recently was 2 astronauts that came forward. I put a video out on this because it was pretty shocking. And they said the idea of colonizing Mars is ridiculous. And both astronauts, former astronauts that were part of the Apollo 5 program, I believe, mentioned that Elon Musk is ridiculous and the idea of going to Mars is just nonsense. But yet they captivate the world, not just with NASA and space agencies, but Hollywood is a big driving force of taking that imagination, taking that science fiction and making it more mesmerizing, because people believe that it's actual, not science fiction, it's nonfiction. This is reality. This is where we're going, where what's going to happen. And I think that's the tragic part about it, is most people are in love with space. And when they stop being in love with space so much and start looking around, they'll start to realize that a lot of the stuff that they believe wasn't true. And there is no proof. I mean, even the proof for the moon landings, when it comes to the telemetry data, it's all gone. They can't find it. I mean, this would substantiate so much stuff, but again, they can't find it. So when we're looking into NASA and space and exposing the world's lies when it comes to these agencies, it's so crucial because, like I said, it shapes everyone's world view, and everyone is believing that we're going to these places, we're going to go to these places, and that we have to go to these places because an asteroid is going to hit the Earth just like it made the dinosaurs extinct. Some meteor millions of years ago wiped out the dinosaurs, we're told, right? But the same story is what we're being told why we have to colonize other planets, because one day Earth is not going to be around. And this whole thing just feeds everything. It's a cycle of lies. And like I said in my documentary film, Scientism Exposed, and the work I do, that dinosaurs solidify the past of this story, and then space solidifies the future. So both of those paradigms are very important to expose, because dinosaurs didn't exist millions and millions of years ago. Look into it. If you're listening to this and you honestly believe that, believe it all you want, but start actually looking into the facts. Just don't believe it because you went to a museum and you saw some fake even in museums, the fossils aren't even real. They're cast, and you can find this out. But the idea that these creatures existed before man and all that sort of thing, to me, where it really hits is the gospel. And the Bible's very clear that basically sin brought death into the world. So if the biblical account is going to be true, then nothing could have died beforehand, is my take on the whole thing. I think that all these things have been propped up not just to mesmerize people, captivate the youth leading into adulthood, but also to directly assault the Bible, and specifically the gospel account. Because if Jesus didn't come and he needed to die for humanity and that we needed a savior, all of this stuff is rubbish. And I think that's what happens, is when people buy into the lies of dinosaurs and space travel and all these sort of things, they start to realize that the Bible truly can't be authority on anything, because it doesn't even understand the universe. Why would you believe a book that doesn't even understand the universe or the sun and the moon, right? So this is a direct assault on the credibility and the authority of the Bible, and that's why it needs exposing, and that's what we're going to continue to do.
Yeah, absolutely. If you can create doubt into the belief of the Bible in any manner, then you destroy the credibility. Then you can't believe anything, and that's what science is, or scientism has done. And they purposely use that strategy in order to incorporate a more and more belief in the lies that they prop and pile on top of the other lies that they've already fostered and have got everybody to buy into. Pastor Nate, you were wanting to say something about Bill Nye?
Yeah, I think it really floors me because, of course, in the truther community, there's, his quote about, as he's speaking to young people, and he says, one thing I really want your generation to understand is that the earth is a closed system. Really, there's no way to go. We're not getting off this planet, as they would say. And I just think it's amazing that public figures can say that, and the comment just goes right over the majority of people's heads. It's almost like he didn't even say it. And, you would think that an honest person would be sitting there going, what did he just say? Stuff that Neil deGrasse Tyson has recently said about flat earth. He had a couple of slip ups. And so it's crazy to think that even the figureheads of scientism have all said some things. Michio Kaku talking about how, if we're off by, this what is it, a factor of 10? Yeah, factor of 10, that's considered horrible, but it's like, now we're talking about a factor of 10 to the 120 or whatever it was. I'm like, wow, if people were actually paying attention, they would say, wait a second, this guy, this theoretical, physicist and whatever else, and Bill Nye and Neil deGrasse Tyson, I mean, they would say, wait a second, what did you mean by that? But obviously the media is not going to say, oh, wait a second, Bill, you were quoted as saying ABC. The only people that are looping that are the truthers going, wait a second. But yeah, it's kind of messed up.
Yeah, Neil deGrasse talking about gravity and how there's no way that they can confirm it or they can quantify it or even make sense of it, and yet nobody even bats an eye, those kind of things. And so, well, Robbie, I know you've been working on and always working on the upcoming conventions, that there's going to be quickly, even though it's still 8 months out, the August conference there in Canada. Can you talk about it, and
Yeah,
if you know
I
any
talk
of
about a
the
bunch of them. Actually,
lineup?
there's a few really, yeah, there's some good ones actually even before that in California at Question Everything. I think it's in Yorba Linda. Is that what it's called, Pastor Nate? Yorba Linda? I think it's Yorba Linda. Anyways, it's
Yeah,
Yorba
that's
Linda,
that's
California.
correct. Yep.
Yeah, Yorba Linda. I never even heard of the name until Question Everything 2019 came out. I'm like, Yorba Linda, what is that? But anyways, Yorba Linda, California, February 22nd and 23rd. I'll be speaking there. I believe Pastor Nate's going to be there as well. And they're going to be touching on all sorts of different topics, including flat Earth, but they'll be getting into scientism, 9/11, vaccinations, GMOs. They're going to get into all sorts of stuff, which is awesome. And then there's going to be a New Zealand Flat Earth Expo conference, and that will be in April, I believe 28th and 29th, I believe, of April 2019. So I'll be at that one, which is really exciting. Can't wait for that one. There's also going to be some other conferences coming up as far as Amsterdam, which I'm planning to go to, which will be the first one in, I believe, Europe, but that will be in the capital city, Amsterdam. It will be September, I believe, 26th, 27th. There's, I think, in there somewhere, but it'll be September 2019. I'll be doing the Flat Earth International Conference 2019 USA, and that will be in Dallas, Texas, and that's going to be November 14th and 15th. So that's, I'm looking forward to. But I think, Pastor Nate, there's some other stuff as well coming on. I believe that Take on the World.
Yeah, there's going to be, Take on the World 19 is going to be, again, towards the end of August of 2019, and that's going to be in Vermilion, Ohio. It should be at the same venue at Beulah Beach on the shores of Lake Erie there. So that should be really good. Then there's a few other conferences. Declaring the End from the Beginning is one, I think, that's also at the same time as Question Everything, but that's over in Fayetteville, Arkansas. So, for those that can't make it out to California, or, specifically are more interested in that content, that's a good option as well. But so it seems like, the problem that more and more folks are going to run into is there's just too many good conferences.
Right.
You're just going to have to pick and choose as best you can.
Yeah, some are not directly flat Earth, but some will have actually flat Earth topics there. So some are more obviously the ones I put on are specifically flat Earth conferences as well. Flat Earth convention Europe in Amsterdam. Obviously, that's all going to be flat Earth, but also they're doing Flat Earth UK, and I believe it's 2 weeks before the Amsterdam conference. That's going to be in the UK, and I think it's called the Global Eye Tour convention, and they're going to be doing it there, I believe, in London, I believe. So. There's a lot of stuff happening this year, from like New Zealand to like Europe to UK, Canada to US. I think we're going to see the intensity increase, as well as not just specific Flat Earth conferences and conventions, but also, conferences that will touch on cosmology, that will get into scientism a lot more, just because it's resonating with so many people. A lot of people. I would say it's one of the fastest growing topics, especially online. Anytime they do, whether it's bad or good, it doesn't really matter. A lot of people get really upset when they see a hit piece, or they see some media outlet go, put together a story and make fun of Flat Earth. Well, yeah, here's one thing to consider. I mean, I'm putting on Flat Earth International conferences for the last 3 years. I put out like 8 documentaries. I've written a book, and I came to Flat Earth through a video that was making fun of it. That's right. It was making fun of it. It was making fun of the Bible. It was an atheist, and I'm like, this has got to be rich. Here's an atheist, and what? Flat Earth? Okay, because I knew Isaiah 40:22 clearly taught, a sphere, that was a proof text. So I'm like, well, this is going to be interesting how some atheist is going to bring out the Bible. So my point is, we don't have to be so scared when the truth is on our side, regardless whether it's in a good light or a bad light, people are going to be exposed to it. People are going to wake up. The recent thing with Logan Paul, actually, I put up a thing on my Facebook today confirming that the Logan Paul Flat Earth documentary is coming out January. He just released a video and he mentions it in there. And it is a fantastic video. For anyone that's not familiar with me being interviewed by Logan Paul in my hotel room at the conference in Denver, you should go to my channel and check it out, or just type in Logan Paul, Robbie Davidson, and you'll find the interview. But anyways, it was a phenomenal video he put out today, just to kind of explaining. If you want to know more about his story, I would suggest you check out that video because it is absolutely very telling. But the idea is that he'll be putting out the documentary in January. And so many people, whether or not it was in a good light or a bad light, he's got close to 20 million subscribers on YouTube. And let's just say that 2% started looking into Flat Earth. It's over 500,000 people that are going to start looking into Flat Earth, even if, hypothetically, he did it as a hit piece. Although I do not believe it's going to be a hit piece. I believe it's going to be a curiosity piece, and go research it yourself. So I'm excited for that to come out. I'm excited for more people to come out and just question it. A lot of people even started questioning the moon landing, and they got blasted a couple of weeks ago. Hopefully some people in 2019 that are some big figures, big names, are going to come out and stand firm, even though they're going to get blasted, even though they're going to lose their sponsorships. Hopefully one will take the stand, kind of like Pastor Nate took a stand, coming out, speaking out, putting his name on the line. Hopefully more pastors will, from churches. Hopefully more celebrities will come out regardless of their contracts. More sports stars will come forward, because this is resonating. People are watching, they're listening, they are researching, they are doing their own experiments, and there's no denying it that we've been lied to about the world we live in, period.
Yeah, absolutely. And Pastor Nate and I, we had talked about previously the other pastors that have reached out to him and have told him about, the same kind of experience happening to them. And so now that you guys have this new platform, maybe you can get some of those guys to come on with you to share their story and to stand up for truth in this manner, and to relate what had happened to them, and in similarity as to what happened to both of you.
Well,
what do you think about that?
I think it's great, and I'm sure that Pastor Nate will agree. But hopefully, we can have some people calling in to maybe share their stories.
Absolutely.
Getting testimonies, but also putting the call out there and saying, look, put your name on the line. Now's the time, and if you want to, now's the time. It's kind of like, when you're bold enough and that you don't care when, that's why when you get married, you have witnesses. But it's the same thing that when you surrender your life to Christ, you're not embarrassed. You're not doing it in private. You're not doing it in secret. This whole idea that my relationship is private. That's nonsense.
Right.
We're called to have a very public life. And I would say the same thing when it comes to this. If we're standing on God's truth, we need to be public. So hopefully more people will take that opportunity, and we would love to have them on. And I'm sure Pastor Nate, with his encouragement and stories, maybe more people in ministry will come forward, and we'll have some great dialogues. What do you think?
Yeah,
Nate?
Yeah, I would agree. And I have some plans in the new year on my channel to have at least a couple of folks on. Been talking to a guy who was a Christian teacher. He was a history and Bible teacher at in a Christian school, and he kind of came into that conflict after knowing about the true, biblical cosmology. He decided, I can't lie to these kids, because even though it was a Christian school, some of the curriculum, of course, was very, scientism-y, and he ended up saying to the kids, hey, what does the Bible say? Let's compare it. And his contract did not get renewed, and it caused some heartburn. But he's over it, and I'll probably have him on my show. But yeah, there's some other. I think Robbie also is aware. There's been a couple of other minister types that have surfaced. One person recently I don't really know much about, but apparently he was fired back in 2017, but has recently kind of made that whole situation public. So I would say that in 2019, there's probably going to be at least a handful of people, new faces, and new testimonies. Some will probably be ministry related. Others will just be, believers in things that they've experienced. And still others will be, as you mentioned earlier, atheists, people who became Christians but were previously atheist or agnostic. So I think 2019 is going to be a big, big year.
Yeah, absolutely. And what better show to come on than Celebrate Truth, right?
Amen.
That's right, man.
That.
Celebrate truth, but remember, it's all about exposing the world's lies and celebrating truth. So that will be pretty much the paramount part of the show, and I think we're going to have a great time in 2019, and it's going to be a ton of fun. So got lots of surprises planned, and get ready. It's going to be a show like you've never heard before. I can guarantee you that.
Oh, fantastic. I wanted to ask you, Robbie, if y'all have gotten the bumper and the musical interlude and all that settled there.
Yeah, it's getting done currently. It'll be done probably by early next week. So I'm
nice.
In the process of getting that all done, and it's going to be exciting. It will definitely grab the ear, and people will be intrigued to hear more. So I'm sure there'll be a lot of people. Plus, I'm going to do a lot of promotion for the first show next week. So hopefully we get a record-breaking audience on the first show.
Awesome. That sounds great. All right. Well, if you would, both of you, I want to give you a chance to give out your current contact information, Facebooks, YouTubes, anything that you'd like to share. And Robbie, where people can go to find and to support you in your work with your books and your videos and documentaries.
Sure. You want me to go first?
Yeah, go ahead. And then we'll go to Pastor.
Okay. Yeah, you can find all my information at celebratetruth.org. That's my website. My YouTube channel is just Celebrate Truth. Those two words, you'll find pretty much everything there. I've got 8 documentaries. I have now just closing in on 126,000 subscribers, almost 18 million total views. So it is resonating with a lot of people in just over 3 years. My channel has been up. So very exciting stuff. But yeah, drop me a line, check out my channel. You can view all my stuff for free. And if you want to check out a DVD, go to celebratetruth.org. And also, I got my brand new book, my first book, Scientism Exposed, Hiding the True Creator of Creation. You can get the book either at my website, celebratetruth.org, or go to Amazon, and be happy to hear from you soon.
Are you doing autographed copies at all upon request?
Yeah, I have them. I have them on my website. So if you're wanting a numbered and autographed copy, those are on my website. Through Amazon, those are just regular copies, right? But nonetheless, it's all offered there, and you can find all my work. But like I said, if you want to, try before you buy, sort of thing, especially when it comes to my films, The Global Lie, Scientism Exposed, Impossible, any of those ones, they're for free. You don't have to pay a cent. Just type them in on YouTube or check out my channel. But if you do want a hard copy or you want to get it out to certain people, and it's a great resource, especially with this topic. But anyone that's listening to this that's curious about these topics that we've talked about, check out my number one recommendation to you is check out Scientism Exposed. It will blow your mind.
Yeah, I'd recommend that people get your book and the video and pass them out as a tandem to your loved ones, your family members, your friends. And man, that would be a great tool for awakening them to, this particular topic, and then introduce them to the whole lies of scientism. But Pastor Nate, if you would, brother, if you'll give out your information and also share your Patreon account so people can support you in the interim while, those that know you've been fired from your job for standing up for this truth, and you are in between as far as working and having something to support your family.
Yeah, I appreciate it. The Patreon is www.patreon.com/Nate Wolfe. And I do appreciate those folks that have signed up to help and give a monthly pledge. I am looking into, some other, at least temporary options for, jobs, whether it's part-time. We've really just been praying about it and relying on, the Father to provide. And, January and February are going to be kind of a crunch month for us. My severance from the church is long gone, and we're making adjustments, financially, but appreciate those who would consider doing that, even a small amount monthly. But also you can email me. My new email is nate@firedfortruth.org. Nate@firedfortruth.org. And I check that daily. And my YouTube channel is Fired for Truth. That's Fired, FOR Truth. I try to upload at least a video weekly there. I have videos, some videos about the true biblical cosmology. And then I've also, the last several weeks, just about every week, I've been uploading something that I'm calling scripture sharing, which is sort of like a weekly sermon of sorts. And a lot of people have requested that, to have additional weekly biblical content. So after preaching for, 20 plus years, certainly happy to do that. And if it encourages others, gives them another, opportunity each week to get encouragement and to get into the Word, then I think that's a good thing either way. So yeah, that's what I've got going on right now. And of course, co-hosting with Robbie on the new radio show, Celebrate Truth, is going to be, great. And I'm sure that will open up some other, avenues to get the message out, share the gospel, and even get some support for my new ministry. So appreciate that.
Hey, I just want to thank both of you guys for, the joining me in round table and for setting up, and you, Robbie, for accepting this new time slot and for your willingness to come on and share all your information and your truth. We've got just about 3 minutes remaining, so I want to give you each chance for final comment. Robbie?
Well, I'll just say that excited. Thanks so much, Zen, for taking over everything in the interim. I really appreciate that while I was kind of getting everything finished and finalized with the Flat Earth International Conference 2018. It was a hectic time. It was great, and looking forward to 2019. So I'm going to get everything together this week. I think I have some training early this week and put together a really great show. I think a lot of people are going to be really intrigued, and the content I think is going to resonate with many, many people. So we'll see what happens, but I'm excited to finally start a consistent show, but also have it available for the first hour anyways on YouTube. I think it's going to add an amazing element, and really excited to have Pastor Nate on board with me as my co-host. And I think it's going to be a great team, and we're going to do amazing things in his mighty name.
All right, Pastor Nate, let me give you a chance to end it out.
Amen, Robbie. And I would just say, as well as all these other truths, obviously the most important truth is the truth about Jesus Christ and the gospel, which is certainly good news about salvation offered through him. And so encourage all those who are interested in looking into the truth about Jesus Christ. If there's any way, that I can encourage you, or Robbie can, others, Zen, let us know, and we'll do everything that we can to try to encourage you in that, because ultimately, if you know all of these other truths, which can help you in this life, but you're not mostly concerned about eternal life, what would a man, give for his soul? Nobody wants to get into eternity and realize that they have missed out on the greatest truth ever. So just want to encourage people to consider, if they have not already done so, the truth about Jesus Christ and about eternity.
Amen. Very well said. And I just want to, wish you both well and good luck on the upcoming show. And looking forward to listening and hearing and seeing where it goes. And I know that it's going to be a great blessing for the world. And so thanks again, both of you guys, for coming on and sharing, the past few weeks with me. It's been a wonderful and beautiful discussion and getting to know more about your stories. And yeah, I think the whole thing with both of you being condemned and judged for this truth, that's going to go a long way in promoting and helping others to also come out in the challenges and the difficulties that many people are facing in coming and standing for the truth of God's word with regard to this particular topic and all the things that are connected to it. And so I appreciate you guys. And don't forget, everybody, tune in next week Robbie Davidson and Pastor Nate Wolfe will be beginning the first show and kicking it off into the new year. Celebrate Truth, 10 p.m. to midnight every Saturday. God bless all. Good night.
Thanks, Ed.
Good night, man. Bless.
Bless, guys. Love.
Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.